Good evening, everybody. I'm so happy that you all are here to participate in this webinar that we're hosting tonight. It's called From the Ground Up: Building Your Dream Home. And what's so exciting to me about this is for all of you attending, I'm imagining that you're thinking about taking on a project like this, and it's a complex endeavor, and we want to give you some tools to be able to accomplish this and have some insight into this process. And so I just think it's such an amazing journey that we're going to take you on through these couple of homes that we're going to show you tonight. And I'm really excited about the HartmanBaldwin people that are with me tonight. So I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Jesse Emmert. I'm a design build consultant for HartmanBaldwin. What that means is my background's in design, but I also have a pretty extensive background in construction as well. And if you were thinking about working with us, I might be one of the people you meet and kind of guide that project through from the stem to stern. But we also have a couple of really talented folks here tonight that I want to introduce you to. So one is Alan Brookman, who's one of our senior architects. Alan's here. Alan, would you like to say a couple words?
Sure, welcome. This is going to be a lot of fun. Building a house from the ground up is probably one of the most difficult things we do as architects. There's a blank sheet of white paper staring at you at the beginning of this process. But, in the end, we come up with something that's, pure, creative, and something that's custom designed for you. It's a lot of fun, and I hope you'll enjoy what we're going to present tonight.
Thanks, Alan. And also we have Troy Coates with us, who's our construction manager. Troy has lots and lots of years of experience in construction, and he's going to be able to talk in some really great detail about these projects specifically. Troy, why don't you say a couple things if you like?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. And I don't know if you had to say lots and lots, Jesse. Just kidding. Lots is in fact true. I've been with the company for over 25 years now, and enjoy working here and building beautiful homes such as that you're going to visit tonight. So glad that everyone's here with us, and hope you guys have a good time.
Thanks, Troy. So let's take a minute, and I promise this isn't going to be a commercial for HartmanBaldwin, but I want to tell you a little bit about who we are so that you can have a sense of where we're coming from in terms of this presentation. So we are a fully integrated design build firm. We're located right here in the foothills of the Los Angeles area. We have an office in Pasadena and one in Claremont. And for over 35 years, we've been solely dedicated to building beautiful spaces in the residential sphere. So ground up homes like we're talking about today and residential remodels, that's our specialty. And over 35 years of doing that has really given us the ability to create some amazing spaces, but also to really refine a process that allows you as a potential partner in this with us as a homeowner or a person who's thinking about undertaking this, the ability to have a successful project. And I think that's what's so exciting to me and so important about what we're going to talk about tonight, is that we've created these tools over these years, and they've served our clients really well. And we're going to, as a case study, look at a couple of homes that allow us to show you how those things work. So as this fully integrated design build firm, we're both architects and general contractors, and it's all under one roof. We're working together kind of hand in hand all the way through the process. And that's why we have Alan and Troy on tonight to show that, but also you're going to hear these sides, and you're going to see how that there's such an intertwining of those two disciplines, the build and the design side of things. But let me talk a little bit about these two homes. So you can see that they're very different styles, right? The Laminette home is much more traditional looking. The English Road home, it sort of defies categorization in terms of style. We're describing it as a contemporary ranch, but I think what these point to more than anything is the building of a ground up home is really an individual expression that is a partnership between your architect and you, the client. And you can see that that is embodied in these two different homes. So the laminate home is a shingle style home. It's reminiscent of maybe some of the East Coast shingle styles at the turn of the last century. And it was very much in line with what the homeowners wanted. The English Road is much more contemporary, but obviously there's a lot of organic detail that we're going to see in this, and we're going to learn about how that indoor-outdoor relationship works and how the project is so perfectly suited for the site that it was built on and the wants and needs of this client that we worked with. Before we go into that sort of case study on these two homes, I want to talk a little bit about approaches that one might take when they're thinking about undertaking a large project like this, because the approach can be so central to the success or failure, quite frankly, of one of these projects. So I want to talk about what we describe as the adversarial triangle. Now it's gonna get a little bit negative here for a minute, and there's a reason for that, and you're gonna see what that is. Now, the traditional way that one might go about building a home is what we call a design, build, bid, build format. So the homeowner, the client, and we're going to call him the owner in this graphic, is going to bring an architect into the equation. And the architect is going to want to please the owner by putting together some drawings and start listening to what they want in terms of what we call your program, your wants and needs. And they're going to look at the site likely, and they're going to start coming up with some design ideas. Now, ultimately, the owner might say, hey, I have a budget. I'm thinking this is about what I want to spend. This is about the size home I want. Here's some of the amenities I want in it. And the architect is going to be considering those things. But as an architect, they're not necessarily going to have the tools to be able to give an accurate projection of the true cost of a project. In fact, they're likely going to be working off data that is, or maybe is not, super accurate. And ultimately, there's going to come a time when there's going to be a builder, a contractor that's involved. And the issue we have here is that there is not a clear relationship most times between that architect and the builder. And there's going to be somebody who gets caught in the middle of any kind of disagreement that comes up. And that's going to be you, the owner, sadly to say. The responsibility ultimately is going to fall on the owner here. And I want to give a little bit of an illustration that brings this to light in a sense. I think maybe some of you know that before we were in this kind of pandemic era and we went to YouTube videos and some of these other means of communicating, we did seminars, and oftentimes it would be a seminar might be held in a public place where we would invite some of our potential clients or just the community, and we would talk about the same things we're talking about tonight. And I was leading one of those a few years ago, and during the seminar, I was talking about this one particular project, and it was really interesting to me because it was a large-scale project, and we had bid on plans that had been produced by an outside architect. This set of plans, they were good plans, they were complete. In fact, the homeowners had spent years and years working with this architect to develop these plans. And we put a bid in on them. We had a couple other, the architect had a couple other contractors bid on these plans. And ultimately, our bid was right in the middle of these 3 or 4 other builders. Unfortunately for the homeowner, they were all 2 or 3 times what was the expectation. And as I was telling this story at the seminar, there was a woman in the very front row who was kind of looking at me sideways and kind of nodding her head in a really emphatic way. And she came up to me after the seminar and she said, I think I just bought that house that you're describing. And I said, what? And she's like, yeah, the way you described that, I purchased this house for my family and we've moved in and I'd love for you to see it. But she said, what ended up happening is this couple was so frustrated with this process that they gave up on the whole thing and decided to sell their house. They weren't going to do any of it. And that's it's a cautionary tale, but that's what can happen, right? Because as that relationship develops between the owner and the architect's job is to please the owner. And so pretty soon you might be putting all these wonderful things into your drawings that are going to be great accoutrements, but there's no real accountability to the cost. And this is an extreme example, but honestly, I talk to a lot of people in my job, and I unfortunately hear about those sort of what I'll call failed projects, and oftentimes that's the case, right? People have spent their heart and soul putting time into a project that goes nowhere because either the ultimate cost was way over what they imagined, or there was some other big miss on the part of the architect or whatever else, and there's just isn't that accountability between the design and the build. And that's just what's so powerful about a design build approach. So I want to talk about another approach briefly. So sometimes I've heard people say, well, if there's this terrible relationship between the designer and the builder, let's just get rid of the designer altogether and just go straight to the contractor. Contractors know how to build, then we don't need all this fancy design. Let's just go straight into it. And of course, that can be fraught with its own set of problems. One being that the contractor is likely not really qualified to be doing a large scale project and designing it on their own. And if you drive around town, I don't want to disparage contractors in any way, shape, or form, but there are times when you see these homes and you're like, there could not have been a designer involved in this because of just elements that are totally incongruous or whatever else. But there's also other issues with that approach. And part of it is just designing on the fly, right? And there's no accountability ultimately to cost because, again, the contractor may have a good idea of what things cost, but he might not have, or he or she, I shouldn't be sexist here, he or she might not really have a good idea of what you want because it hasn't been detailed out and drawn and those selections haven't been made. So in your mind, you may be thinking, all these full craftsman details and what's been drawn are very, very, rudimentary, and what your vision and your contractor's vision are just not in alignment. So that straight to construction can have its own set of problems. And ultimately, as you see the contractors looming large here in this image or in this graphic, and that's going to be the case too. I think as the owner, you're going to feel very small because there's so little that you really understand about what that contractor is doing, and that communication is likely not going to be as successful as it needs to be to pull off such a complex project. So I want to talk about, now I want to go a little bit more positive here with what we call the creative sphere. And this is where the design build process really lends itself to this idea. If we have a relationship between the architect and the contractor, and that relationship extends to the homeowner, to our client who we're working with, we can start working together to solve problems. And that gives us an opportunity to not only think about, hey, how do we do this from, a physical perspective, what maybe the vision is, but it also allows us to have great insight into costs of things. And those cost insights are going to be critical to a successful project. As we talked about, or as I mentioned in that cautionary tale, you could have the greatest vision and the most beautiful plans and everything worked out, but ultimately, if the cost is going to be 3 times what you can afford, you're not going to have a successful project. But if we can start talking about costs and we can work out some of these other important issues or important parameters, such as, zoning code and lot coverage and all those things, and work all that together and really listen to you as a homeowner, as a client, understand, as we say, your program, your wants and needs, then we can come up with some amazing projects, or even in the beginning, it might be sketches, some design ideas, but we get that feedback loop going and we come up with these creative solutions. And you can see that there's no arrows pointing between one or the other. It's all working together. It's truly this creative sphere. And I think that's what you're going to hear from Troy and Alan when they talk about their involvement in these projects that we're highlighting, just how wonderful and how satisfying it is to start getting those things working together as they do. So let me just briefly touch on the design build process and the way that we apply that to our projects. So we start out with what's called pre-design. That's just kind of getting to know one another, getting to know if we're a good fit, whether our project works, or our process works with your project. And then we start putting together a conceptual design study. The conceptual design is trying to figure out the big picture stuff. Design development is getting all the details worked out. That design development is both in getting city approvals and getting working drawings put together and all that, and also all the interior and exterior details. And then we go into construction. So I'm going to spend just a few minutes talking about each of those, and I'm going to get help from Alan and Troy also. So I'll just briefly say in the conceptual design, hey, we're trying to figure out the big picture. We're solving the parameters. We're looking at lot coverage. We're looking at all the jurisdictional parameters. We're looking at your wants and needs. We're putting together estimates. We're also getting a scope of work because sometimes there's items that are outside of those preliminary drawings or sketches that we want to take account of. You know, Troy will talk about in one of the projects, the English Road projects, we had a bridge, we had all this other site work. And initially, that might not have been on the drawings that we're looking at just for the home itself. So those items are really important in just figuring out big picture stuff. And once we're at that point, and obviously we've done others of these YouTube videos. If you want to see and learn more about the conceptual design process, click on this Avoid Remodeling Pitfalls. You can see the little graphic there. That's going to be really helpful. Another thing I didn't mention, kind of housekeeping, I'm so sorry. I just thought of it right now. If you have any questions as we go through this, please use the Q&A button. We have panelists that are kind of working behind the scenes that can answer some of your questions. If we think it's a question that's going to be really helpful that lots of people are going to want to hear the answer to, we may answer that live at the end of the presentation, but in the meantime, you may get an answer from one of our panelists. So my apologies that this is kind of coming late in the talk, but use that if you would like to. And then once we've got the conceptual design worked out, we move to design development. So design development, well, Alan, why don't you tell us a little bit about what goes into the design development process?
Design development is basically taking the sketches that we started with in the conceptual design part and turning them into drawings that we can, that serve two purposes really. One is to get the city approvals we need, the building permit, planning approval. And the second thing is it's the blueprints, the instructions on how to actually build the project that Troy would use, for example. So everything, the exterior finishes, how beams are shaped and connected, structural drawings, energy calculations, all of the interiors, we fully detail all the cabinets and whatnot inside so that we know, this drawer is going to have this, we're using this hardware. All the specifications are part of the design development drawings.
Yeah, thanks. That's helpful. Yeah, so getting all those details then worked out is such an important part of the process, because again, before we get to the point of construction, we want to know what we're building, and not just in a very kind of rudimentary way, but in a very, very specific way.
Yeah, I was going to say, Jesse, real quick, I was going to interrupt and say it might sound counterintuitive. for a guy to say that he needs directions, but it's true. When you're building something as complex that we're looking at right now, you guys have talked about it, in regards to all the details and the time spent with Alan and the clients that are putting all their wants, their needs, together. Things can get missed if it's not put together properly by someone like Alan, and a full scope and a plan on where everything goes is of the utmost importance for something to this scale.
Yeah, thanks, Troy. And another example of how that can be helpful in the planning process is these renderings you're seeing here. So, of course, the plans are going to be the essence of what we're putting together, but 3D renderings can be really helpful for visualization tools. And in this case, the one on the left is an early rendering of the English Road project. You can see that color-wise, it's not all there. It's not what we ended up developing. And the entry is much longer than it was, but it was so helpful for our clients to see that and get a sense of what this was going to look like.
Let me also mention, Jesse, that as an architect, having construction in-house is invaluable, particularly in building something as complex as this. If I need to work out a detail on a beam, or a connection, I can go to Troy and say, hey, how would you build this? Which is why I really love working for a design build company. That's right.
Thank you.
Yeah, and also something that's exciting about this, the renderings that we're looking at right now too, Jesse, is, again, one, it's just absolutely amazing for me to look at this and be a part of it. And I know what went into it, but to see a rendering and how exciting that could be for a client to be able to look at that. Because again, the after photo, you could see how close it is. And on this particular project, it is sitting on a 9-acre lot, and we moved over 24,000 cubic yards of soil. The mountain, actually, tip of the mountain was over top of the existing roof in that photo to your right. So to just imagine standing on this hill as a client and looking at that and try and visualize what this is going to look like when it's on, one-dimensional page, but to then grab this 3D rendering and be able to see it and see how close it comes to it. I mean, not only exciting, but just such a useful tool. So definitely something that's amazing.
Yeah, that's remarkable. And that tool can also work on interiors as well. So in the next photo, you can see a 3D rendering of the laminate project. And the first one, of course, is the rendering, and it's showing the kitchen just for visualization purposes. And the second one is the after. Now, a sharp eye might notice something to the right of the photograph, and I'll let Troy talk about what that is.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. We're looking at that, and it's interesting that the rendering is incredibly close. I mean, there's hardly any variations, but if you really start to dissect it a little bit, you'll notice that the oven in the after photo, so the actual kitchen that we built, you'll notice that the oven is quite a bit lower. The reason that's lower is because one of the meetings that we have when we are in construction, we go through even though Alan's done a beautiful job on this, we go through the cabinet, go through the space, and we talk about all of the cabinets in totality. We go drawer by drawer, cabinet door by cabinet door. We talk about it, and we tailor that project in that kitchen to our specific clients. And we literally stood there with our client with their hands in a 90-degree position as if she was, cooking a turkey at Thanksgiving. And we realized that the oven was just slightly too high for a double oven. So by the time she was going up to that double oven, she would burn her forearms, trying to put that in and out of there. So just that what may seem like a simple detail, but if we didn't take that time to go over that and have that meeting, she'd have been calling us every Thanksgiving with burned forearms. So it's again such a useful tool.
Yeah, and then the other aspect of design development that is such a helpful tool is the interior design side of things. So in the interior design, we're really honing in on all those details in terms of choosing tile and countertops and flooring materials and all that, because once we're in construction, if we've made all those selections prior to construction, and that's where one of our team members, we have some really talented interior designers that are in-house that we work with, and they're looking at things from both an architectural perspective. So they want an interior that reflects our clients, our homeowners, but also reflects the architecture that we're working with. It's not just in a bubble that these decisions are being made. And you know, it ends up becoming such an important part of the project ultimately.
I'll point out, Jesse, that on this project, we're pretty certain that we had all of the selections down. So the rendering was actually done to validate the selections we had, which is one of the reasons why it's so very close to what was actually produced.
Yeah, thank you. So in the next slide, there's a little bit of a checklist of what goes into that design development, getting all the details, integrating the engineering with the drawings, interior design, selection, specifications, and the working drawings. And you can see also another video or YouTube video that we did, successes in the details on this aspect of the process. So another place you might want to check out to learn more about this specific aspect of how we put things together. I find that the more people learn about not just how we work, but you know, tools to make good decisions, the more successful their project ends up being. You know, there's a lot of, I'll just say, misinformation out there, and not to disparage any, you know, TV channels or anything like that, but you know, a TV channel that focuses on remodeling, their goal is to have viewers, not necessarily create tools for people to have successful remodeling projects. And part of the drama and all that stuff is what they're selling, not necessarily a successful project for you. So bear that in mind when you watch some of those shows and things. The other side, the last of the important phases is construction. And obviously, this is where the rubber hits the road. You know, by the time we've made all these decisions and created these detailed plans, and we've integrated our engineering, and we have a full set of approved plans, we still have to build it. And maybe Troy, you want to talk a little bit about these various important milestones in the construction process?
Sure. Well, I'll back up a little bit. Alan actually just touched on, you know, pre-construction for me is a couple things, right? Alan touched on one of them. Pre-construction is something that, because we are architect build, we have the opportunity to look at projects, and Alan and I can get together very early on and talk about, you know, cantilevers, beams, posts, what they mean, the integrity of the building, and how that should go together. You know, I'll admit neither Alan nor I are engineers, you know, and engineers have their place, but it does allow us to talk with, you know, with the complexity of a project and be able to work through those pieces and recognize what we need and how this can be built and make sure that it can be built. So that's a piece for pre-construction for me. Pre-construction also, though, for us is prior to the project happening. You know, we have an agenda that we've put together over years of doing it. And what this pre-construction meeting is we come in prior, obviously, this is obvious, prior to construction, and we review this. And it's basically the rules and regulations of your home. I mean, you know, oftentimes we'll do projects. The projects we're talking about right now, the home doesn't exist. However, oftentimes when the homes are there and we're doing a remodel, you know, we live amongst you, and you know, the home is incredibly sacred. It's where you lay your head down at night, and it's you know, it's obviously very sacred to you and to us as well. And we want to make sure that we honor that and make sure we follow those rules.
Well, most of our clients live in the house when we're remodeling it.
Yeah, definitely. And in this pre-construction meeting, we talk about just about anything you could imagine. You know, kids' names, animals, next door neighbors, insurances, just everything. Just we really want to make sure that we cover every aspect of what's going to go on during the construction while we're there with you. During this pre-construction, one of the things we talk about is we have weekly meetings. So we talked about that collaborative sphere. So one of the things that I want to mention, and that is that, you know, as we continue to go along our process, our clients never lose a teammate. What we do is we continue to gain teammates. And as a project manager comes on for construction, that's an additional teammate that you gain for that construction. And so in these meetings, we set up for weekly meetings that we have with our clients, where we talk about everything from schedule to budgets to, how the project's going, how exciting the next few weeks will go, and just make sure that everyone is absolutely aware of every element to that job as it comes about. During these weekly meetings, there's a couple key meetings that I like to point out. We already talked somewhat about one when I was looking at that 3D rendering, and I mentioned about the cabinetry. We actually go through the space, a kitchen, a bathroom, library, whatever it may be, and we talk about these cabinets in great detail. Even though Alan has taken this time to draw these plans out and make these beautiful drawings of cabinets, it still gives us an opportunity to look at these plans, walk through the space. And again, I mentioned making it tailored specifically to you. Might be right-handed, might be left-handed, and these are all key elements to how your home will come together. We also do a plumbing meeting that's very similar, and an electrical meeting that is also similar. Lights, switches, garbage disposal switch, right side, left side. Very intricate, very detailed meeting. Again, Alan does a wonderful job at all this stuff. But again, it's an opportunity to walk through the physical space and make sure that it absolutely is tailored to you. And then last but not least on here, project completion is just that. At the end of the project, we all want to get together, not only to celebrate the project, but to make sure that we did and fulfilled our contract with you, that everything is complete, everything is satisfactory, paint is all completely done, nuts, bolts, screws, everything to the last screw down to the toilet paper holder is in fact in. So project completion, it's a great meeting. It's a celebration as well as a completion to that particular project.
Yeah, thanks, Troy. One of the things that's been kind of sad with the pandemic is that we haven't really been able to celebrate in person like we normally would. Of course, we're still completing projects, and we've been very good about keeping everybody safe and making sure that we're paying attention to all the safety protocols. But just getting together and, maybe sharing a meal or whatever with our clients at the close of construction is something that we're just postponing for the time being. And I'm going to be happy when we get back into that. But the project completion happens, and we still make sure that everything is done and completed to everybody's satisfaction. So let's take a look at a couple of these projects that we're talking about. So the first one's going to be the English Road project. Actually, I'm wrong. The first one's going to be the laminate project. Sorry about that. Look at the before picture. Not much there. But as Troy mentioned, part of what we were doing initially with the homeowner was choosing a site. So actually, maybe Alan had mentioned that, but it was important to find the right site for this homeowner. They came to us. We had worked with them in the past on another home, and they had a certain amount of program that they wanted to get into their project. And so we looked at a number of sites with them and ultimately settled on this particular site. And you can see there's a bunch of boulders on the site, but not much else, kind of a bit of a moonscape. And ultimately out of that came this incredible home. And you mentioned that great white sheet of paper, Alan. You might say a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, the clients had as Jesse said, had lived in the area, and they had sold and moved out of town and discovered they really missed it. So they wanted to move back. The new owners of the house refused to sell it back to them. So they set about looking for a way to build a new house to their specifications, and they wanted something Hampton style, which is a derivative of the shingle style, with a lot of woodwork and whatnot. And they came to us with a program, and we took that and figured out a site that we could, a number of sites that were candidates, and we settled on this one particular site as being capable of fitting the house they wanted on it, and we set about doing sketches.
Something I'd like to add to that too, that I feel is a tremendous honor, is that these particular clients were repeat clients. We have done multiple projects for them before. So to have them come back to us and have that same trust that they did on the first project, and to come back and put that trust in our hands to build something as big and as magnificent as this, it's an honor. It really is.
Yeah, Troy, thank you. Thanks for saying that. That truly is. And I like what we had talked about, some of the details on this. Alan had mentioned that shingle style being representative of the East Coast, and most of the time on the East Coast, these homes are clad in cedar shake and shingles and a lot of wood, but that's not the case here, is it?
No, this being Southern California, and this is just like one lot into a very high fire severity zone. So by code, we were required to make the house fireproof. So all of the trim, everything on the exterior here is fire resistive, and that's a fiber cement shingle and fiber cement trim, fiberglass columns, smooth stucco to look like painted wood. It's all fireproof. Doesn't look it though. It still mimics the Hampton style the clients were looking for.
And now you're seeing the entry hall inside. Alan, let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, the entries is off to the left here. So we're looking at the main circulation corridor in the house. And pardon the pun, a hallmark of the Hampton style is the white painted woodwork. And I'm sorry, Troy, I must have driven you to distraction with all of this because it all has to align perfectly inside and out. And Troy did a beautiful job executing my drawings here.
Yeah, no doubt about that, Alan. Thanks. And I agree. Yeah, it seems simple when you look down this corridor, as you mentioned, but to think about the windows on the inside, outside, door openings, and all of this trim, following all through the house, and it has to be at the exact same level from one end all the way to the other. The wainscot and the transfer of how that molding came about is, it has to be precise. There was no way that we could have a window that was up an inch compared to another one or down or whatever. There was no way on something like this. It has to be so technical. And, we create a control line very early on. And basically that's our line in the sand that has to stay from beginning to end, helps dictate that.
Yeah, and I think Troy's phrase early on is really key because all that detail has to be planned from the very beginning. Because if one certain thing is off, it's going to just track all the way through, and you're not going to be able to cover that up with molding or, moving something down a little bit or whatever else. Your eye's going to go right to that. Kitchen we talked about.
Yeah, so as we walk down the hallway ahead in that last view, we come to the kitchen. And the clients were cooks. They were retired. They wanted to spend a lot of time together. So all this is open. All the downstairs, basically, all the living spaces are open to one another. The master bedroom is downstairs, and on the east side of the house, guest bedrooms are upstairs.
Yeah, that's a good point, Alan. So one of the things that, as we talked about, this house was specifically designed for these particular clients, and it was designed for them as retired people to have something that's not going to force them out of the house in the future. So you're going to see downstairs master suite. You're going to see elements that allow for aging in place. And that's found throughout the house. And of course, for space constraints, there are some upstairs bedrooms, but those are guest bedrooms, as Alan said.
So there's the dining room. One of the nice features about the house is the transom windows on the south side looking out onto the yard. Also, we had a little sitting space there that the clients would sit there in the mornings and have their coffee and tea and look out on the backyard and out across the San Gabriel Valley.
This was one of their favorite spots. I know that for a fact. They loved sitting in those windows, as you mentioned, looking out over their backyard and enjoying the morning paper or coffee or whatever. They really enjoy that spot.
So looking the other way down the corridor is the master suite. Again, there are doors off to an outdoor patio there on the left. Master suite is straight ahead, laundry to the right. And again, a higher ceiling in here with the windows to the south, looking out on the yard.
This is a good spot to show, again, that trim I was talking about, with the transom windows up above, again, if their placement isn't exactly so, that trim that follows through the whole house, the wainscot, and how all that hits a specific header, a beam that transfers over an opening, it all has to be absolutely in line. And when you have two straight lines that are running parallel with each other, the second they don't, you notice.
I love the clean beach feel of this room too, that kind of beachy Hamptons feel. That follows through into the master bathroom as well. That's a walnut cabinet with a clear finish on it.
Yeah, and the doors here, there's one to either side of the master, of where the bed is placed in the master bedroom. And I think we'll see in a minute the shower, which is, and the vanity, which are off on the left here in this view. There we go. Looking the other direction. And again, all open and designed to be accessible as the clients age.
Yeah, and even though there's a mutual gathering area in the middle, right? The shower, you can kind of meet in the middle. The sinks, you can meet in the middle. Each one of those doors that Alan was mentioning, those they open up to his and hers side. So 2 water closets on either, one on either side, a walk-in closet on either side. It gives the opportunity for a his and hers.
Here's a
This
great
is that beautiful backyard. Yeah, it's that beautiful backyard.
Yeah, and it's a great example of how the home kind of opens up through that covered patio to the backyard and has that connection with the indoor-outdoor living.
Yeah, and if everyone remembers the first picture that we showed of this lot, it was that blank lot with our HartmanBaldwin sign out there and the address alone. And you could actually see evidence of some of the rocks that were on the site that we integrated into some of the landscape and hardscape in the backyard. So I can tell you that rock that's off to the right side, it's about the size of a Volkswagen Beetle. It was not an easy task to move, I could tell you that.
Here's that covered porch area, outdoor fireplace.
And you can see how that trim runs all the way through. And then that's a stucco ceiling up above the fiber cement shingles, and with a gas fireplace off there on the left side. The client made his money as a machinist doing tool and die work for plastic injections in the medical industry, actually. And he loved collector cars and working on machines and machining little miniature models. So this was a difficult space to design because he had, a lot of specific equipment that he liked to work with, and we had to plan out where each piece of equipment would go within this space. All the electrical, pneumatic lines for overhead pneumatic equipment. Very detailed, and I mean, he works in this all the time, but it's spotless.
Yeah, in fact, as is the case, and Troy kind of alluded to, we do become quite good friends with our clients, and we are often invited to this home and others to kind of show it off. And I remember one time I was there just before the pandemic and noticed on one of the tools there was some little metal shavings there. So I know he'd probably been working there that morning, but it is definitely a working shop.
Yeah, it's a working shop, but it's a beautiful working shop. He's very he's very detailed, and something else in these pictures reminds me of when we were doing the project. I look at the floors and one might think that they're painted or maybe even a floor surface that's on it, but that's actually black concrete that we poured in the lower levels to give it. It almost feels like a chalkboard feel to it, but it just adds a beautiful touch and kind of finishes off these cabinets and this shop, make it stand out.
It kind of looks like the old slate from the old laboratory slate,
Here's some of his cars. Yeah, this is some of his cars that he works on. He's wrenched on every single one of these, so he definitely has a hand at all of these. That's for sure.
So there are actually 2 garages on this house. There's one for the collector cars, and there's one further up the driveway, closer into the street for everyday cars.
Those aren't everyday cars, Alan?
Well, they would be for me.
I know they would be. I've seen some of yours.
Now we're gonna start talking about the English Road project. So remember Troy had mentioned this 24 tons of dirt, I think in 24,000 cubic yards of soil. I almost got that wrong. Here's a shot showing the house originally staked out after some of that dirt was removed, right, Troy?
Yeah, that's exactly right. This is looking at, just that kind of that blank slate or that white paper, I guess, is Alan referenced to it as, right? So this was us after we cleared that 24,000 cubic yards of soil and start getting ready for, foundation work, et cetera, on this English Road home. And there it is in all its glory.
That was the after. And note that these are both projects. These are photos that were taken shortly after the project was completed. So, you know, sometimes the landscaping's not in yet. In other places, it's very immature landscaping. And there's been a few years since then, and the landscaping has grown in beautifully in both of these projects.
You know, something we'll explore when we get into the inside. I'll say right now, but it's really hard to see. But you know, the two walls that are closest to us, how the house projects out into this picture, you can't tell it from this picture, but there's two different radiuses that are involved with that outside. So those are not 90-degree walls. You know, one's like 136-foot radius, and the other one's like a 96. But the way they come together and just add interest to the home, it's not. You know, it's not noticed right away, but you'll notice it when you get inside and closer to it in detail.
I'll point out, Troy, that you know this very well. This is a very complex house to build. A number of architects in the office worked on this, getting all the details right, and the roof particularly. But that adds a lot of interest to the house, and you know, it's a wonderful composition.
Yeah, and to some people, I think it's a little bit challenging to see this house in photographs because it is so complex, and you're seeing, you know, obviously just a photo of this house, but it really responds well to the site. And that's what great architecture does, right? It takes in not just the wants and needs of the owner, but it responds to that site. And so this house just opens up before you on this site. And it's hard to appreciate that in the photos, but you're gonna have to trust me, it does. And I also think there's just some beautiful color palettes that work so well with the existing surrounding landscape.
Yeah, this is the front entry to the place. It's a beautiful walnut door with iron windows, steel windows, able to get smaller muttons or mullions to allow larger pieces of glass, and really enjoy the views that are all around this ranch. And stonework, as well as the big beams that are over top, are Alaskan yellow cedar. You know, I often tell everyone when we were working on it, Alaskan yellow cedar is what commonly #2 pencils are made of. And I always felt that as we were working on it during the day, it felt like we were just constantly sharpening pencils all day long. It had that smell about the place.
Yeah, and you'll notice in those columns that are to the right of the door that taper down into the stone, there's an iron detail that wraps the base of those columns. And there's little details like that all over where you're seeing these different materials coming together, the natural stone, the yellow cedar, the iron, the steel windows. And even though we have all these different materials, they come together in such a pleasing way and create this really unique natural palette.
Yeah, that's a great thing. You'll as Jesse had mentioned, you'll see these little details throughout. There are corbels on the outside, these little bandings on there, and they were all fabricated by one of our custom metal fabricators. And they really give a blacksmith kind of feel. So they were hammered out, heated up, and really shaped into the respective shape that they are now. So it wasn't something that was just bought at a store. So really, really fun and cool stuff.
And it's cool too how you see, go ahead, Troy, sorry.
Oh, that's okay, go ahead.
I was just gonna say how you see those exterior materials finding their way inside the house. So there's this blending not only of the interior and the exterior in terms of that connection between the spaces, but the materials themselves are blending that distinction between indoor, outdoor.
Yeah, another good point. You know, again, you'll see later on, you can see the rail, you can see just pieces of the handrail that go up on the top, and those are all hammered out, rails to the for the handrail that goes up. That was all hand done. And like you mentioned, that stone that's on the outside, the ledger stone on the bottom of it, they have these little projections that come inside here and on the fireplace that just play with this indoor outdoor space and invite some of those pieces inside. It's nice. This is right in the front door. You could actually see the front door just to the right here. And these pieces are something quite special. The floating bench that you're seeing there with the two pillows on it it definitely has a special story behind it. So that piece of wood, there's a piece of wood that's right up on the window ledge behind the door. And then soon we'll see into the powder room around the corner. But These came from world-renowned Sam Malouf's house. We were honored to be able to go up and visit him at his house, and he allowed us to walk through his space and actually pull these live edge, beautiful pieces of walnut that we made these floating benches, and this sink that you're seeing here, or this countertop on this cherry cabinet that you're seeing here. But these are out of Sam Malouf's stock, so to speak.
Now, Sam Malouf was a national treasure, and if you haven't heard of him, Google him. He passed away a few years ago, but he had made a rocking chair for every president since, I'm going to say Kennedy, but that might not be right. But he was an incredible craftsperson.
Yeah, definitely. This is in the living room. Again, you could see to the left the windows that we're talking about, and this just beautiful view of the ranch down below. Overlooks their property, overlooks their ranch. These homeowners, they raise miniature horses, and it was real important for them to be able to have these big open windows and spaces, not only to enjoy their property, but to be able to see the ranch and make sure that they were able to manage that from afar. The cabinets here, I was going to say the cabinets on the other one, but even here, this is the kitchen. So this is actually the view that we were just staring at, just turning a 180 and staring back into the kitchen. This has a similar feel as the Laminette house, where it's an open kitchen to the living room. This is a younger family here, young kids, and they wanted to enjoy cooking and hanging out in the kitchen and baking while the kids were in the front living room enjoying TV or playing with games or whatever it was. But to have that open space, and the cabinets in here are a combination of a paint grade cabinet. You could see the cabinets on the back wall painted, and the cabinet at the island it's a gumwood.
Yeah, and I love the distressing on those painted cabinets. So it really gives it kind of a time-worn, old ranch house feel, but not in any kind of a shabby way. I think it's really beautifully elegant extension of some of the other elements in the house, but still very special to this room.
Yeah, definitely a comforting kind of a nice warm used feel to it, right? So it just feels like it's just already maybe been lived in and loved for a while, and it has that good warm feeling to it.
Well, and I'll point out that the whole point of doing this is to create a custom house for our clients. The island has spaces for cookbooks, a farmhouse sink, storage for baskets and things, the overhead cooking rack. These are all things the client asked for. And so again, we're trying to build a house that's exactly what you want.
All right, well said, Ellen. I agree. This is in the same room. This is looking past the island, looking into the entertainment center, the fireplace. Again, you'll see this combination of beautiful cherry wood over there with gumwood down below. So just playing with different species of wood, adding some character and some interest to the space. This is the lower office. So again, this is, at the tail end of the living room there. This is his office again, right behind this picture. It definitely overlooks the ranch. Nice little bar that's right there. This is also that angle that I was telling you about earlier on too, where you could see these curved walls that go through the house right there, and different radiuses to them. So this is where that fill comes into effect, and you can even see how it carries through on the soffitted piece on the ceiling. This is the dining room, just up the stairs from the room that we just came into. More of a formal dining room. Again, beautiful cherry cabinets along the back walls and arched windows, BG fir windows on the inside. Again, the metal doors and windows that play throughout the house. You're allowed to go structurally a little smaller on the rails and styles on something like that. So again, what that does is it allows a lot more glass and viewing area. This is right inside the front entry. Actually, this is right beside the where the Sam Malouf piece was. And something I would like to mention on this particular view right here, you can see how vast this is when you start looking up to the ceiling up on the second floor, and realize from the second floor how tall those ceilings are and how far they are out of reach. Again, without the architecture, without the drawings, without someone coming through and designing this and building this, and having the forethought to to take that time to figure that out and do that. You know, in order to make that happen, the structural steel that went into this place was just phenomenal. You know, to allow these big, open, vast spaces like that. So, but again, without that planning, you know, I think you could miss all of this stuff.
Yeah, and you can see how that form, you know, it reflects some of the surrounding countryside. There's these arches that kind of feel a little bit like the hills, and it's subliminal, but there's a power in that, and these massive volumes just give the house such a presence.
Yeah, agreed. And you know, this is that, again, you could see this roof from the outside. You could see these glue lamps that are arched offsite and brought and craned into place. But again, a lot of people would take these glue lamps and just paint them, where we decided to stain them and highlight even the different tones, and then the TNG in between that just warms up the area and just, again, creates interest as far as I'm concerned. So very, very beautiful.
And you can see in that railing some of the details, you know, a little bit different, but some of the kind of general design vocabulary that you saw on the exterior, where those columns came down and the combination between the iron and the wood.
Yeah, and that radius coming into play again. You can start to see it there in some of these pictures. It's faint, but it's definitely there.
Yeah.
This is the master suite. Corner windows in the master suite, a little balcony out of the back, again, overlooking their property, their backyard, immediate backyard and pool, as well as overviewing the ranch back in the, you know, in the distance there. This is the bathroom, master bath, just off of the master suite. A few pictures going on here. So again, had the opportunity on this one to design a his and hers. So his cabinet vanity is to your right, and hers is over to the left in the distance. Single shower. The shower, you can see the detail to the shower in the lower right. You'll notice that it has solid glass on it with a glass awning style window that's up on the top. There's a steam shower that we installed in this, so you can get in there in the afternoon and enjoy a nice steam shower right at home. And then when you're done, you're able to tilt that window out and vent it open and let it all air out. What a way to end the day, right? Beautiful, beautiful cabinet and closet up there as well. And this is from the outside. This is looking up as you're approaching the driveway. You know, one thing that Jesse kind of touched in on is the complexities to this project, you know, that we had to go through because of this. The lot that this is on and subdivided was 9 acres. And so they have over 1,200 linear foot of driveway that approaches and comes up to this place. And again, this, you know, there was nothing up there. There wasn't electricity. There was not water, sewer, gas, or anything. And that's something that we had to bring in, and including a 65-foot bridge that went over the creek that was down below off of the main road that comes up to their property. But again, this is just coming up your driveway, looking at your beautiful home with the infinity edge pool, and that house just sits out there just beautifully. Even down to the last little thing, farm, we actually even do gardening. So there you go. We little gardening area in the backyard that we help provide, but all the pool work, landscape, hardscape, it's something that we absolutely took under our umbrella and took care of. All of the stones, all the rocks on that pool are actual rocks, stones, boulders, if you will. There's not a single faux boulder on this lot. Our metal fabricator he's so talented. One of the things I want to throw in there too, Jesse, is you could just see over the last planter area there, the barbecue pit. That's something that our metal fabricator made as well. So it's a little sunken barbecue pit with a little chain drive to where you could crank the grill up and down if need be.
Yeah, I was just going to add that it's so important with a project like this that has that connection, and the laminate project as well, to have a nice relationship between the hardscape and the home. And so, you know, though we don't have to always take the landscaping and all the plantings under our wings, with a project like this, it's very helpful to plan those together. Here's a photo you've seen before if you've ever followed any of our literature, but this is the back of the house, like looking back out, right?
Yeah.
Another view of all those boulders that were all selected and positioned very strategically and artistically.
Well, that's one of the great things about, doing a ground up project as an architect, is we get to site the house, position it properly on the site, even design some of the landscape and hardscape.
That's right. So this is, we're kind of coming to a close here. So first I really want to thank Troy and Alan for being panelists on this webinar. I just feel like so much of what they provided gave me a lot of insight into these particular projects, and I hope that it was helpful for you. I love working with these guys. They're amazing, and all of our team members are amazing. And I think you can see it in the projects that we're showing here. So for all of you who have joined us tonight, I'm encouraging you to learn more about us, to keep coming back if you want to learn more about us. And not just learn more about us, get some tools to have a successful project. I mean, we always think that nobody can do it like us, and I still believe that's true, but no matter who you're working with, maybe you're watching this and you're on the other side of the country, you're not in the LA area or the San Gabriel Valley. Maybe you're still finding out that there's some things that you can learn from this. So I appreciate everybody who is here. So I did say that we're gonna take some questions here at the end. Before, I would just want to mention really briefly, we have another webinar coming up on September 9th. And it's about successes in the details of the design development section of our process. Also in September, we're going to do another mid-construction showcase. That looks like it's going to be a live event where we're actually going in and looking at a project that's happening sort of midstream as a case study. I've found that those can be, people have told me they're really helpful in better understanding how things really come together. And then, you may say, hey, I've heard enough. I want to work with you guys. Give our office a call, and we'll schedule a consultation where either myself or one of my colleagues will come out and talk to you about your project and talk about options that are available and see if we're kind of a good fit. And then keep tabs on us through the various social media outlets. I think there's a lot that can be learned through those. But let's take a minute and see if there are any questions. Christina, did anybody have any questions that would be relevant for Alan or Troy or I to answer?
Yes. Hi there, Jesse. First and foremost, I would like to say thank you to all of our panelists. So Jesse, Troy, Alan, thank you so much for such a great presentation. It really is always so great to hear from you directly and reminisce on such wonderful projects. So just a virtual round of applause for you all. But in terms of questions, it looks like we answered most of them, but we did leave one here for the end. And that was, how long were both projects in construction?
Oh, that's a good question. Maybe you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I think that would be good. Laminette was a little shorter on time. It was actually, to the day, it was 13 months long. So we celebrated with our clients out on site, put up an awning, made special little shovels, had some champagne, and took pictures and just celebrated digging that shovel into the ground. And 1 year and 1 month to the day later, we actually finished that. It was 13 months long. So, and then English Road, definitely a much more complex project in regards to hurdles and again, working with Fish and Game and Army Corps of Engineering and getting through that creek, and the driveway I'd mentioned was, almost a project in itself. It was closer to about 18 months on that project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a great question. And that was it for us on this end.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Christina and Troy and Alan. Thank you so much for joining me here tonight. I hope everybody found this webinar informative, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next one. I'll talk to you all soon.
Excellent. Thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks everyone.
Bye.